Pisces, sometimes life does not announce itself with noise. It does not knock loudly on the door. It only whispers, just enough for you to feel your heart slow down. Lately, you may have noticed something quietly unusual. Not because the world is changing too fast, but because you are no longer reacting the way you used to. The things that once pulled at your emotions now drift past like a distant wave. Old questions no longer demand immediate answers. Tomorrow carries this kind of energy. Not dramatic, not sudden, yet clear enough for you to sense that a boundary is forming. And if you find yourself wondering, what is really happening to me? Stay. Because the very first sign of this turning point is beginning to reveal itself. Tomorrow may pass looking exactly like any other day, at least on the surface. The sun still rises on time. Things continue in familiar routines, and the world around you does not need to change to mark anything extraordinary. But sometimes, what matters most is not what happens, but how you feel time moving through you. Pisces has always been sensitive to life's rhythm. You do not only live in the moment, you live within layers of emotion, woven with memory, intuition, and thoughts that have never fully found their names. And lately, you may have started to notice a very subtle misalignment. Not because life is moving too fast, and not because you are slowing down, but because the things that once kept you in sync no longer move at the same tempo. Tomorrow, that feeling may become clearer, not as an event, but like hearing a familiar song and realizing you are no longer humming along to the old melody. The sound remains the same, but your ears are hearing it differently. This is not a sign of disconnection. If anything, it may be the moment you begin connecting more deeply with yourself. When something inside you stops chasing the outside rhythm, you gain a new vantage point on life. Close enough to feel it, yet far enough not to be swept away. Pisces carries a remarkable ability to adapt. You know how to blend in, how to wait, how to endure longer than most. But there comes a time when adaptation no longer brings peace. It only creates a quiet exhaustion, one that is difficult to explain and even harder to name. Tomorrow, you may no longer feel the urge to fill every empty space in your day with activity or overthinking. You may allow an unanswered question to remain unanswered or accept that you do not need to understand everything right now. That is not giving up. It is a sign that you are learning how to live with what is unfinished without feeling unsettled. A quiet turning point rarely comes with certainty. It carries its own kind of ambiguity, where you cannot clearly say where you are headed, yet you know, almost for sure, that you no longer wish to stay where you are. For Pisces, this feeling is more familiar than you might think. It is just one you used to ignore in favor of stability. Tomorrow, you may begin listening to it more seriously. Not to make a major decision, but to acknowledge that something within you is asking for a different rhythm, a different way of existing, lighter and more honest. No one is asking you to change immediately. There is no call to take action. Only a very human realization that you are entering a phase where honesty with yourself matters more than complete answers. And if something slows you down tomorrow, do not assume it is stagnation. It may simply be the moment you are recalibrating your inner rhythm to match the path ahead. Not loud, not obvious, but enough for you to know you cannot return to your old way of living as if you never felt this shift. The first change is often the hardest to notice because it does not appear on the outside. Life continues to present familiar situations, familiar faces, familiar words that seem to carry nothing new. Yet somewhere inside you, something has shifted its position. Not because you have grown indifferent, but because you are now receiving everything through a different layer of awareness, slower, deeper, and far less easily pulled along. Pisces is known for reacting quickly to emotion. You feel before you think, you respond before you fully understand what is unfolding. But lately, you may have noticed that you are no longer immediately carried away by every emotional wave that appears. Words that once occupied your mind for hours now linger for only a few minutes, then dissolve like thin morning mist. Situations that once demanded long inner debates no longer take over your inner space the way they used to. This is not a sign of emotional numbness, and it is not a sign that you are shutting yourself down. It is the moment you begin creating space between yourself and your own reactions. You no longer merge your identity with every feeling that passes through you. You notice them. you experience them, but you do not feel compelled to act on them immediately. For Pisces, this is a significant shift, even if no one on the outside can see it. You may still care deeply, still listen, still understand others with sincerity, but you no longer allow every story, every sadness, every expectation placed upon you to pull you away from your own center. You begin to realize that not everything that touches you requires an instant response. Some things only need to be acknowledged and then gently set aside. This change may feel unfamiliar, even to yourself. There may be moments when you wonder why you no longer react the way you once did, why emotions no longer rise as intensely as before. But if you listen more closely, you may sense that beneath this quiet, there is a stronger foundation forming, not emptiness, but stability. Pisces is often associated with softness, yet few recognize that when this softness matures, it becomes a refined ability to regulate rather than collapse. You do not need to tense yourself to appear strong. You do not need to prove that you have overcome anything. The difference is simple. You are no longer pushed back and forth by external forces the way you once were. When something no longer triggers your old patterns, it is not because it has lost its meaning, but because you have changed where you are standing. You are viewing life from a slightly higher place, where things are no longer so close that they overwhelm you, yet not so distant that you become disconnected. And this shift is one of the truest signs that a transformation is quietly unfolding. No noise, no announcement, no need for recognition. You are simply beginning to live by your own inner rhythm instead of allowing the outside world to dictate how you should feel. This is not the destination, and it is not the final answer. It is only a natural step on the path of back to yourself, where you no longer need to become someone else, and no longer need to cling to old reactions just to feel safe. In every life, there are things that do not disappear because they were wrong, but because they have reached the end of the road they were meant to travel. Pisces often holds on for a long time to what once felt safe, even when you are no longer truly living inside it. You do not leave easily. You do not let go in haste, because you can always sense the value of what once existed. Yet there comes a moment when you begin to notice that holding on is no longer driven by feeling, but by habit. Tomorrow, this awareness may become clearer, not through a firm decision, but through a sense of lightness that is difficult to explain. A thought that once occupied so much space in your mind no longer appears as often. An expectation that once kept you waiting no longer feels necessary. A connection once considered important grows quiet without causing any real disturbance. This is not a moment of blame nor of regret. You do not need to go back to analyze right and wrong. You do not need to ask who changed first. You simply begin to see things exactly where they are now. Some things were perfectly aligned with who you used to be, but no longer move in harmony with your current inner rhythm. Pisces often carries the belief that everything must be preserved to the very end. Yet, you are also the one who understands most deeply that life is always in motion, and not everything that lasts a long time is meant to last forever. When a cycle has fulfilled its role, the most natural continuation is not holding on, but allowing it to close with respect. Tomorrow, you may no longer feel the need to explain why you have changed. You do not need to prove that you tried hard enough. Some concerns only need to be set down. They do not require a clear goodbye. They do not need a symbolic ending. This closing happens quietly, like a door being shut very gently, just enough for you to know that you no longer need to walk through it again. What matters is this: when a cycle ends at the right time, it does not leave behind emptiness. Instead, it creates a sense of spaciousness in the mind, where you no longer carry old weight out of fear of losing the meaning of the past. You begin to understand that honoring what has been does not require you to keep living there, and it is this acceptance that allows you to move forward without carrying a burden. No resentment toward anyone, no blame toward yourself, only a quiet agreement between you and life that this chapter has completed its purpose. There is no need to rush into the next one, and no need to remain standing still looking back for too long. Everything unfolds at the right rhythm, at the right moment, and in the gentlest way you are able to receive. Pisces begins to understand their own worth, not through grand affirmations, but through very small changes in how you show up in the world. You may not be able to name it right away, yet inside you, a quiet reordering is taking place. What once required you to constantly adapt is now being observed with calmer eyes. No judgment, no self-blame, just awareness. You begin to realize that silence no longer means avoidance. Silence becomes a buffer, a place where you can pause and listen to yourself before the outside noise moves in. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Not every emotion needs to be expressed right away. There are moments when keeping something to yourself is how you protect your inner wholeness. Distance also starts to take on a different meaning. In the past, you may have feared that distance meant loss, coldness, or hurting someone you care about. But as your awareness matures, you understand that healthy distance can be where healing happens. It allows people to breathe more easily. It lets emotions settle. And it keeps you from dissolving into stories that were never yours to carry. Pisces has always had a natural tendency to place yourself in someone else's position, sometimes to the point of forgetting where you stand. But at this stage, you may begin to see that compassion does not require the sacrifice of your own peace. Understanding others does not mean accepting everything that drains you. True kindness, you realize, includes being kind to yourself. Tomorrow, you may no longer feel the need to explain your choices so thoroughly. Not because you have closed off, but because you understand that not everyone needs to fully understand your journey. Some things are meant to be lived, not proven. When you say enough, it is not a rejection of life. It is an acknowledgement that you have listened long enough to know what fits you in this moment. New boundaries do not appear as tall walls. They feel more like soft outlines, clear enough to keep you from losing yourself, yet flexible enough to stay connected to the world around you. There is no need to cut ties, no need for confrontation, no need for drastic action, only an understanding of when to pause, when to move forward, and when to return to your own inner space. Tomorrow, choosing yourself may feel surprisingly calm. No sense of victory, no trace of regret. Just a gentle agreement between you and your inner world that you deserve to live at a pace that does not exhaust you. You allow yourself to say no without guilt. You allow yourself to step away from situations that no longer nourish you. And you allow yourself to remain with what feels true, even if it is not perfect. What is precious about this phase is that you do not lose your natural softness. You simply place it where it belongs. You still feel deeply. You still resonate. You still care. But you no longer allow everything to enter so deeply that it pulls you off course. These new boundaries do not make you distant. They allow you to be more present. Because when you are no longer constantly defending yourself, you are able to live more honestly. And perhaps this is what a very Pisces kind of maturity looks like. Not becoming hardened, but knowing when to be gentle, when to pause, and when to choose yourself without standing against anyone. When the old begins to leave, the first feeling is rarely complete emptiness, but a strange and quiet stillness. Like a familiar room that suddenly becomes empty, you begin to hear your own footsteps more clearly. That space does not rush to be filled. It lingers just long enough for you to notice that you are breathing differently, lighter, slower, and with a clearer sense of awareness than before. Pisces is not usually comfortable with empty space. You tend to fill every opening with emotion, with thought, or with care for others. But at this stage, you may begin to sense that not every space needs to be filled. Some spaces appear so you have room to stand, room to look back, and room for something new to find its way in. This space does not arrive with a clear sense of loss. It does not hurt the way losing something truly important does. Instead, it carries a neutral feeling, a place where you are no longer being pulled forward and no longer held back. You stand there, not waiting for anything specific, but listening to the smallest movements taking place within you. In that quiet, your intuition begins to speak differently, not rushed, not vague, not tangled with other people's emotions. It feels like a slow current, clear enough to recognize when something fits, and gentle enough that you are not forced to act right away. You do not need to understand every message. It is enough to sense that you are being guided toward a rhythm of life that suits who you are now. Trust in the path ahead does not come from absolute certainty. It is not the feeling of knowing exactly where you are going or what you will become. It is a grounded sense of stability, where the unknown no longer causes panic. You begin to trust that you can move step by step, even without seeing the entire picture. For Pisces, this matters deeply, because you often feel safest when everything is clear. The open space also allows you to look again at what once occupied too much room in your mind. When those things are no longer there, you realize you never needed as much as you thought. You can live with fewer expectations, less pressure to become someone, and less urgency to respond to everything around you. This simplicity does not make life smaller, it makes it more real. You do not need to rush to fill the space with new plans or new goals. There is no need to immediately figure out what comes next. Some seasons in life are meant to be lived, not directed. When you allow yourself to stay with the space long enough, you give what truly fits the chance to arrive on its own, instead of being pulled into choices you are not ready for. Pisces may feel a little unfamiliar without the old rhythm, but this unfamiliarity is not threatening. It is like changing a sleep pattern, awkward at first, until the body slowly adjusts to something healthier. This space serves the same purpose. It is time for you to recalibrate how you show up in life, no longer out of obligation to adapt, but out of a desire to live more truthfully. And throughout this phase, the most important thing may be that you do not push yourself. There is no need to answer every question, no need to design the future in detail. Just listen to the small signals, the quiet sensations that only you can recognize. This space does not ask you to become someone else. It simply invites you to come a little closer to who you already are, so that when something new arrives, you have enough room to receive it without losing the peace you work so hard to build. Pisces, what arrives tomorrow is not here to confuse you, and it is not here to push you in any forced direction. If there is something worth noticing, it is the feeling that life is beginning to feel steadier beneath your feet, in a very quiet way. Not because everything suddenly becomes easier, but because you no longer have to spend so much energy just to keep your balance. This change does not look like a sharp turn. It feels more like stepping off a rough road and realizing the ground beneath you is smoother, even though the scenery around you has not changed yet. You are still moving, still living, still facing familiar situations, but something inside has shifted. You no longer find yourself asking what you are striving for, or who you are trying to prove yourself to, because this new rhythm of life does not demand daily justification. What leaves does not create the large emptiness you once feared. It leaves because it is no longer necessary for the road ahead. And this does not make you lighter in a shallow way. It makes you steadier in a deeper sense. You are no longer carrying things that once required you to constantly adjust yourself just to fit the moment. You begin to stand in a place that allows you to be fully yourself, without shrinking and without stretching any part of who you are. You may notice that you are no longer overly sensitive to outside judgment, not because you stopped caring, but because you understand more clearly what truly belongs to you. Other people's opinions still pass through. They are acknowledged, they are heard, but they settle where they belong without penetrating as deeply as before. This new phase does not ask you to become a different version of yourself. It simply creates space for you to live more fully within your natural nature. The softness of Pisces does not disappear. It is placed on a more stable foundation. You still feel deeply, you still empathize, but you are no longer carried away by every emotional wave that crosses your path. The strength of this change lies in the fact that you do not need to hold on to it. It does not depend on one decision or a single defining moment. It is built through small, ordinary choices, repeated each day. The way you give time to yourself, the way you listen to your body and your emotions, the way you no longer force yourself to move faster than your own rhythm allows. Pisces may not immediately realize that a new chapter has begun, but one day you will look back and see that you are no longer where you once stood, even if you cannot remember the exact moment that carried you forward, and that is perfectly okay. Sustainable transformations rarely need drums or announcements. This change does not take away anything precious. What truly belongs to you will remain, just in a form that better matches who you are now. What leaves simply could not continue walking beside you. Not because you were wrong, not because the past lacked value, but because every journey has its natural stopping points. And when everything settles, you may realize that you do not need to prepare in a tense or rigid way. Readiness here is not an action. It is an inner state, a place where you no longer resist change and no longer try to control it. You allow yourself to move forward with clarity, with gentleness, and with enough trust not to keep looking back. If tomorrow passes quietly, that does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes, that very quiet is the clearest sign that you are moving at the right pace. And within that pace, you do not need to become anyone else. You only need to remain present, step by step, with the calm you have learned to protect. That is why you are asked to be ready. Not to face something frightening, but to receive a way of living that fits you more honestly, steady enough to go far, and light enough not to lose what matters most.